The check had already been written, $47,000 for the final semester, the last payment, the end of 22 years of sacrifice, overtime shifts, missed vacations, and a retirement fund that now sat empty. Richard Coleman signed his name at the bottom and stared at it for a long moment. His youngest daughter, Maya, would graduate in May. His son, Derek, had finished 2 years ago. His oldest, Brianna, had been out of school for 5 years now. 3 children, 3 degrees, 3 futures secured. He should have felt proud. He should have felt accomplished. Instead, he felt nothing but a cold, hollow ache in his chest, because sitting in his desk drawer, hidden beneath old tax returns and forgotten receipts, was an envelope he had opened 3 days ago. An envelope containing 3 DNA tests. An envelope that told him everything he believed was a lie. But let's go back to the beginning, because this story didn't start with a test. It started with a promise. Richard met Patricia in 1995. She was a receptionist at the law firm where he worked as a paralegal. Bright smile, warm laugh, the kind of woman who made a room feel lighter just by walking into it. He asked her to coffee. She said yes. 6 months later, he proposed. "I'm going to give you everything," he told her on their wedding night. "A house, a family, a life you never have to worry about." Patricia kissed him and whispered, "I already have everything I need." They were happy, genuinely happy, or at least Richard believed they were. Brianna was born in 1997, Derek in 2000, Maya in 2003. 3 children in 6 years. 3 reasons to work harder, stay later, sacrifice more. Richard took every promotion he could get. He worked weekends. He missed school plays and soccer games and piano recitals. But he told himself it was worth it. For them. Everything is for them. He never questioned it. He never doubted. But someone else in that house had been living a very different life. The first sign came in 2011. Brianna was 14. She needed a blood transfusion after a car accident. Nothing life-threatening, but serious enough to require a hospital stay. Richard rushed to the hospital, ready to donate. Same blood type, he assumed. He was her father, after all. But the nurse frowned at the paperwork. "Sir, your blood type is O negative. Your daughter is AB positive." Richard blinked. "Is that a problem?" "It's just unusual. O negative parents typically can't have AB positive children. It's genetically unlikely." Richard laughed it off. "Genetics are weird, right? Maybe something got mixed up." The nurse nodded politely but didn't argue. Richard didn't think about it again for years. He buried it under work, under responsibilities, under the constant motion of raising a family. But that moment stayed somewhere in the back of his mind, waiting. The second sign came in 2018. Derek was applying for a scholarship that required a family medical history. He needed to know about genetic conditions on both sides. Richard sat down with him to fill out the forms. "Dad, what about your side? Any heart disease, diabetes?" "My father had high blood pressure. My mother was healthy until she passed." Derek nodded, writing it down. Then he paused. "It's weird, though. I don't really look like anyone on your side of the family. Brianna doesn't either. Maya kind of does, but..." He trailed off, shrugging. "Genetics are funny," Richard said. The same words he'd used 7 years earlier. But this time, they felt heavier. This time, he didn't forget. For 2 years, Richard carried a quiet suspicion he couldn't name. He didn't want to believe it. He refused to believe it. Patricia had been his partner for over 2 decades. She had stood beside him through everything. Job losses, health scares, family deaths. She wouldn't lie about something this fundamental, would she? He watched her more closely. Not with anger, not with accusation, just observation. She seemed normal. Loving, present, the same woman he had married. But there were moments when she looked at the children with something he couldn't quite read. A flicker of something behind her eyes. Guilt? Fear? Or was he imagining it? He told himself he was being paranoid. He told himself to let it go. But the doubt had already taken root. And doubt, once planted, only grows. In March of 2022, Richard made a decision. He didn't tell Patricia. He didn't tell the children. He simply ordered 3 DNA testing kits online and waited for them to arrive. When they came, he collected the samples quietly. A coffee cup Brianna left behind after Sunday brunch. A water bottle from Derek's gym bag. A hairbrush from Maya's bathroom. He sent them off with his own sample and waited. 3 weeks, 21 days of pretending everything was normal while his entire world hung in the balance. And then the results arrived. He opened the envelope alone in his car, parked outside his office. His hands were steady, his breathing was calm. He had prepared himself for any outcome, or so he thought. Brianna Coleman, 0.0% probability of paternity. Richard stared at the number. Derek Coleman, 0.0% probability of paternity. His vision blurred. Maya Coleman, 0.0% probability of paternity. The paper slipped from his fingers. 0, 0, 0, not 1, not 2, all 3. 25 years of marriage, 22 years of fatherhood, hundreds of thousands of dollars, countless sacrifices, and none of them were his. None of them had ever been his. Richard didn't go home that night. He drove to a motel 30 miles outside of town and checked in under a fake name. He turned off his phone. He sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall for 6 hours straight. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He didn't break anything. He just existed, hollow, empty. A man whose entire identity had just been erased. He had built his life around being a provider, a father, a protector, and now he didn't know who he was. But the worst part wasn't the betrayal. The worst part was the question he couldn't stop asking. Who? If not him, then who? One affair could explain one child, but 3 over the span of 6 years. Was it the same man? Multiple men? Had Patricia been living an entirely separate life while he worked himself to the bone to support her lies? He thought back through the years. The late nights she said she was with friends, the weekends visiting her sister, the business trips that seemed just a little too frequent. He had never questioned any of it. He trusted her, he loved her, and she had used that love as a weapon against him. 3 days later, Richard came home. Patricia was in the kitchen cooking dinner. She smiled when she saw him. "There you are. I was worried. You didn't answer your phone." Richard sat down at the table. "We need to talk." Something in his voice made her freeze. The smile faded. She turned off the stove and sat across from him. "What's wrong?" He placed the envelope on the table. "I need you to explain this." Patricia looked at the envelope. She didn't touch it. She didn't need to. She already knew what was inside. And in that moment, Richard saw 25 years of lies collapse behind her eyes. "Richard, please, don't." His voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "Don't say my name like that. Don't make excuses. Don't try to explain. Just tell me the truth. For once in 25 years, tell me the truth." Patricia's hands trembled. "I wanted to tell you. So many times I wanted to tell you. But you didn't. I was scared. I didn't know how. And then the years kept passing, and it became impossible." "Who?" She stopped. "Who, Patricia? Who is their father? Is it one man? 3 different men? Did you even know?" Tears streamed down her face. "One man." Richard laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "One man, the same man, for 6 years. It ended. I swear to you, it ended after Maya was born. I never saw him again." "And that's supposed to make it better?" She had no answer, because there was no answer that could undo what she had done. The children found out 2 weeks later. Richard didn't want to tell them. He wanted to protect them from the truth, the same way he had always tried to protect them from everything. But secrets don't stay buried, and they deserved to know. He gathered them in the living room, Brianna, Derek, Maya, and told them everything. The tests, the results, the decades of deception. Brianna cried. Derek walked out without a word. Maya just stared at him, her face pale, her eyes wide. "So you're not our father." Richard's heart shattered. "I raised you. I loved you. I sacrificed everything for you. If that doesn't make me your father, then I don't know what does." Maya shook her head. "But biologically, biology doesn't mean anything. I was there every single day. I was there." But even as he said it, he could see the distance growing in their eyes. The next few months were chaos. Patricia moved out. The divorce proceedings began. The house that once held a family now echoed with emptiness. Brianna tried to maintain contact with Richard, but it was strained, awkward. Every conversation felt like navigating a minefield of unspoken pain. Derek refused to speak to anyone. He disappeared into his work, his apartment, his silence. Maya bounced between anger and grief, sometimes calling Richard at midnight just to yell at him for destroying the family, as if he had been the one who lied. Richard took it all. Every accusation, every cold shoulder, every slammed door. Because even now, even after everything, he couldn't stop loving them. They were still his children, even if the world said otherwise. 1 year later, Richard received a letter. It was from Derek, the first communication in 11 months. Dad, I don't know how to say this, so I'm just gonna say it. I'm sorry. I was angry at you because it was easier than being angry at Mom. I blamed you for telling us the truth because the truth hurt, but you didn't cause this. You were a victim just like us. You worked your whole life to give us opportunities. You paid for my education. You showed up when it mattered. You were my father in every way that counts. I don't care what some DNA test says. You're my dad. You always will be. I hope you can forgive me for disappearing. I hope we can try again. Derek Richard read the letter 3 times. Then he picked up the phone and called his son. For the first time in a year, he felt something other than emptiness. Healing didn't come quickly. It didn't come completely, but it came. Brianna reconnected with Richard over Sunday dinners that slowly became a tradition again. Maya took longer, 2 full years, but eventually she called him on Father's Day. I know you didn't have to love us, she said quietly. But you did anyway. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand what that means. Richard closed his eyes. I'll always love you, no matter what. Patricia remarried. Richard didn't attend the wedding. He didn't need to. Some chapters close without ceremony, and some bonds survive what should have destroyed them. Richard Coleman paid for 3 children to go to college. He worked overtime for 20 years. He emptied his retirement fund. He sacrificed vacations, hobbies, and dreams, and not a single one of them shared his blood. But here's the truth. The real truth, the one no DNA test will ever measure. Fatherhood isn't written in genetics. It's written in presence, in sacrifice, in showing up every single day, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when no one thanks you for it. Richard Coleman was a father, not because biology said so, but because he chose to be. And in the end, that choice was the only truth that mattered. Epilogue. 5 years later, Richard sold the house in 2027. Too many memories, too many ghosts. Every room held an echo of a life that had been built on sand. He moved to a small apartment downtown. Simple. Quiet, just enough space for one person and occasional visitors. The visitors came more often than he expected. Brianna brought her fiancé to meet him 6 months after the move. She wanted Richard to walk her down the aisle. Not the biological father she had never met, not anyone else. Him. You're my dad, she said simply. There's no one else I'd want. Richard walked her down the aisle that September. He cried the entire ceremony. He didn't care who saw. Derek called every Sunday without fail. They talked about sports, about work, about nothing in particular. The conversations weren't deep. They didn't need to be. The consistency was the message. I'm here. I'm still your son. That hasn't changed. Maya visited twice a year. She lived across the country now, building her career, finding her own path. But every visit, she brought the same thing. A homemade pie, just like Richard used to make for her birthdays when she was small. I never forgot, she told him once. Even when I was angry, I never forgot the things you did for us. And Richard realized that the money, the college funds, the tuition checks, the empty retirement account, none of it was the real investment. The real investment was time, attention, love, and that investment had paid dividends beyond anything he could have imagined. He never found out who the biological father was. He didn't want to know. That man, whoever he was, had contributed nothing but genetics. He hadn't stayed up with sick children. He hadn't taught them to drive. He hadn't worried about their futures or celebrated their successes. He was a ghost, a footnote, a name that didn't deserve to be spoken. Richard was the father, the only one that mattered. On his 65th birthday, all 3 children surprised him with a visit. Brianna brought her husband and their newborn daughter. Derek brought a cake he'd baked himself, lopsided, imperfect, and absolutely perfect. Maya brought a photo album she'd been compiling for years. Every picture of Richard with the kids, from their births to their graduations. We wanted to show you something, Maya said, flipping to the last page. It was a new photo, taken that very day. All 3 children surrounding Richard, smiling at the camera. And beneath it, a simple inscription. To the man who chose us every single day. Blood couldn't make you more our father. We love you, Dad. Richard couldn't speak. He didn't need to. The tears said everything. Patricia never apologized. Not really. Not in any way that counted. She sent a letter once, 2 years after the divorce. It was long, rambling, full of excuses and justifications. She blamed loneliness. She blamed Richard's work hours. She blamed everything except herself. Richard read it once and threw it away. Forgiveness wasn't about her anymore. It was about him, about letting go of the anger so he could hold on to what mattered. He forgave her, not for her sake, but for his own. And then he moved on, because the best revenge against betrayal isn't bitterness. It's building a life so full of love that the betrayal becomes irrelevant. Richard Coleman died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 82. His 3 children were at his bedside. His 5 grandchildren had visited the day before. The obituary didn't mention DNA tests or betrayal or decades of lies. It mentioned a man who worked hard, loved deeply, and raised 3 children who adored him. It mentioned a father, because that's what he was. That's what he always was. And no envelope could ever change that.